The ranging shot was Admiral Verassun's idea of a greeting. I logged the contact at 0312 station time. A single hull sitting in the KL-7, corridor without a transponder signal, without a hail, without so much as a running light. My scanner gave me a silhouette and not much else. Long, edge-nosed, the kind of profile that suggested age rather than design. Whatever it was not moving. It sat in the middle of the transit lane, the way a stone sits in a river. Patient, indifferent, an obstacle that didn't know it was one. Derelict, said Navigator Preth from her console, and she wasn't wrong to say it. The hull showed no engine bloom, no active emissions. The corridor behind it was clear. The corridor ahead of it, where the Veth-Dorian Grand Fleet sat in four-column formation, 400 ships of the Sovereignty's northern reach, the finest assembled force above the KL threshold, was very much occupied. Admiral Sun leaned back in the command chair and looked at the silhouette on the main display. He was a long-limbed man with pale silver skin and the flat affect of someone who has never in his career encountered a problem he couldn't catalog and dismiss. "Hail it," he said. We hailed it. 17 seconds of silence again. Another 17 seconds. The hull did not move. The hull did not respond. On my secondary display, the archive query I'd initiated was still running. Cross-referencing the silhouette profile, against every registered vessel class in the Sovereignty's database, 312 Allied registries, and the public broadcast indices of 41 non-aligned territories. The query bar had been at 94% for nearly 2 minutes, which meant it had found nothing clean and was sorting through degraded or partial matches. That happened sometimes with old civilian hulls. "Derelict," Preeth said again, more confidently. "Drive systems cold, no crew signature at this range." Admiral Sun made a sound of agreement. Around the bridge, the tension that had briefly attended an unknown contact, the slight stiffening of posture, the hands moving to secondary consoles, relaxed. There is a particular looseness that comes over a military bridge when a threat has been assessed, dismissed. I have seen it many times. I recognized it as it moved through the room. "We are 400 hulls," Admiral Sun said, which was accurate. "Move it." The ranging shot was a standard navigational pulse, a mid-yield directed burst, the kind used to push derelicts clear of transit lanes. Not a weapons discharge, a nudge. The translation from the Admiral's tone was clear enough. 400 hulls, you are an unresponsive obstacle, and we have places to be. The pulse hit the derelict hull amidships. The hull did not move. I watched the impact signature on my board. A ranging pulse at that yield against a cold hull of that size should have parted measurable drift within 4 seconds. I counted. 4 seconds passed. The hull remained 6 stationary. I rechecked the yield readout. Was correct. "Misfire?" Preeth asked. "No," I said. There was a pause on the bridge. Not long, perhaps 3 seconds, but noticeable in the way that a sound stopping is noticeable. Admiral Sun straightened slightly in the command chair. Then the hull's running lights came on. Not a single array, not a navigation beacon. Every running light across the entire vessel, and as they came on, section by section from stem to stern, my scanner began revising its length estimate upward. The first estimate had put the hull at roughly 600 meters, then 800. Then the bow lit and the stern was still dark and the scanner revised again. 1,400 meters of active hull, mismatched plating visible now in the light of its own running arrays. The kind of weathering that wasn't cosmetic damage but geological. The accumulation of decades or centuries of operational life pressed into the surface of the ship in scorch patterns and weld seam repairs and panel placements that didn't quite match the surrounding metal. My archive query returned a result. I stared at it for a moment before I read it aloud, because reading it aloud would make it real. "No classification available," I said. "Profile is consistent with pre-sovereignty human military construction. Specific class, unregistered. Age estimate, 140 years, plus or minus 30. The bridge was very quiet. "Human," Admiral Sun said. "Yes, sir." He looked at the hull on the display. All 1,400 meters of it, lit now, engines beginning to bloom at the stern. Not the cold chemistry of a drive spinning up from nothing but the warm even glow of a drive that had been running at idle this entire time, banked the way a coal fire banks, waiting. "They have 1 ship," he said. "Yes, sir, we have 400. He said it the way a man states a proof. The way a mathematician writes QED, I understood the logic. I had run the same arithmetic the moment the running lights confirmed. The hull was crude and active and human. 400 to 1 is not a battle. 400 to 1 is a conversation about consequences. And the conversation ends one way. What I did not say, what I could not say, because the words would have required me to explain why my hands were no longer quite steady on the edge of my console, was that the archive query had returned a secondary notation attached to the human military construction flag. A single line, appended by some analyst decades ago and never removed because it had never needed to be. Note: no confirmed engagement record for vessels of this profile. All contact logs redacted or sealed under Sovereignty Security Directive 7. Do not approach, do not provoke, do not hail. The Admiral had not asked me to read the secondary notation. I had not volunteered it. In the 3 seconds between the running lights and the engine bloom, that window had closed. Admiral Sun opened a fleet-wide channel. All batteries, he said. Full spread. Target the hull. What happened in the next 14 minutes I can describe only in the terms my instruments gave me, because my eyes were largely occupied with the console in front of me and the calculations I was running and abandoning and running again as the numbers stopped making sense. The Carrion Dark, which is what the hull designated itself when it finally opened a channel, a single text transmission, no voice, just a name and a registry number that matched nothing in any database I could reach. The Carrion Dark moved at a speed my scanner flagged as an instrumentation error, and then flagged again, and then stopped flagging because it had apparently decided the number was correct and the universe was simply doing something the scanner had not previously been asked to record. Came through the fleet the way a nail comes through wood, not explosively, not dramatically, methodically. It went where it meant to go, and what was in the way was no longer in the way, and it kept moving. I watched 340 contacts vanish from my board in the first 4 minutes, not in clusters, not in the cascading failures of a fleet that has lost coordination. One, then one, then one. Each at the moment, the Carrion Dark's projected path intersected the relevant hull's position. It was solving a geometry problem. It had, apparently, all the time it needed to solve it correctly. At minute 7, Admiral Sun ordered a retreat. 49 ships made the transition to faster-than-threshold travel in the following 90 seconds. I watched their signatures bloom and go. I watched the Carrion Dark track 2 of them hold, then release. A decision so deliberate it registered on my board as a pause, a considered pause. Before the ship redirected to something else, it let them go. At minute 11, the Carrion Dark reduced velocity. At minute 12, it resumed its original heading. The heading it had been holding when we found it sitting in the corridor, patient and dark and still. At minute 14, it passed the position where the Immaculate Reasoning had been holding when the Admiral gave the order to fire. And it did not deviate, and it did not slow, and it transmitted nothing further. I sat at my console. Around me, 11 ships of the Veth-Dorian Grand Fleet held position. Some had damage. The Immaculate Reasoning had taken a single strike, a glancing contact that had removed the port navigation array and left a gouge in the outer hull, plating 30 meters long. That was the Carrion Dark being precise. That was the Carrion Dark choosing what it left behind. I pulled up the secondary archive notation and read it again. Do not approach, do not provoke, do not hail. Someone had written that decades ago and filed it, and gone home. And the notation had sat in the database unused and unread. And now, I was the only officer in the Northern Reach who had seen it before the fleet-wide channel opened. And I was going to have to explain, at some point, why I had not read it aloud when it mattered. I did not know how to explain it. I still don't. The Carrion Dark's engine signature faded at the edge of scanner range at 0326 station time, 14 minutes and 11 seconds after the running. The lights came on. I logged the contact closed. I marked the corridor clear. In the remarks field where doctrine required a threat assessment, I wrote, 1 hull. No further action recommended. I have not changed that entry. I do not intend to.